Bro, it's good to see
But
you again.
yeah, I appreciate you having me back on.
No worries, man. No worries at all. Well, you're about to head out on the road to celebrate not only 10 years of misery, but also your new EP, Nothing Above. That's a lot to celebrate, man. You know, there's a lot coming your way. How do you feel
Yep.
about, I guess it's coming full circle in a lot of ways too, 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think for us when we released Misery in 2014, that was sort of we'd done a bit of touring and that sort of thing, but that album really put us on the map in terms of the brutal death metal scene and the
Mm.
overall death metal scene and opened up so many opportunities for us to, tour Europe a whole lot more, tour Asia, tour the US, and it's probably our biggest album that we've put out. So for us to celebrate that by playing Misery in full for the first time as well, we're just so excited. We love those songs. We love playing those songs live, and as well as just releasing four new tracks, like sort of experimental tracks written by our bassist Adrian. But it just kind of worked out really well where, we were releasing a new EP. Misery came out literally 10 years ago, so we just thought Misery Above tour and head on out playing some of the new stuff, but playing that album that we loved making in full.
That's awesome, man. And of course, joining you on the tour will be Honest Crooks, I can't even pronounce this, right?
Deliquesce.
Deliquesce. I,
Yeah.
I almost had it. As well as Threshold, TRENCHKNIFE, and Crave Death. I'm guessing they're all mates you've picked up along the way throughout the years.
Yeah, definitely. Honest Crooks. I remember doing a guest spot on one of their releases years and years ago, and we've played a lot of shows with them. I think first time we played with them was 2016. Great band. They obviously bring it. Deliquesce is actually our bassist, Adrian. He plays guitar in Deliquesce. So,
Ah.
and they're one of my favorite bands actually at the moment. They do this insane mix of like New York style death metal with hardcore. It sounds like a class, like what they've already released sounds like classics from the 90s. And then Threshold, I actually saw them a few months ago, and they're just such a sick hardcore band. The vocalist rules. And yeah, I've seen Crave Death, and I've never really checked out Trench Knife, but everyone like hypes them up so much. So we're stoked with the lineups. Like I think it really brings a really heavy mix of different styles.
And of course, you mentioned before you're playing Misery in full for the
Mm,
first time.
yeah.
How's it been sort of revisiting those songs that maybe you haven't played live and so long, jamming on them, trying to remember the lyrics and stuff? Like,
Yeah,
how's
yeah.
that been, man? Like digging into it.
Yeah, look, actually, we were talking about this just the other night. There's songs like Forced Adornment of the Funerary Crown. We used to play that live, but it just dropped out of the set list, and relearning that has been super hard for both guitar and drums, and yeah, just relearning the lyrics, and it's been fun though. For us, I think is the most interesting thing is we've got this sort of doom song on Misery called Megaliths of Despair, and well, I'm really excited to play that live. We never did it in the past because we always thought, we were a bit worried about playing something a bit slower, but
Mm.
we ended up playing slower stuff from our third album, The Decaying Light live, and so we feel like we're actually ready to put that into a set and yeah, play it. We've always been requested to play it, so to finally get a chance to show people what it sounds like live is it's exciting for us.
Is the plan to play both that album and the EP together back to back at these shows?
So we're playing half of the EP after we play Misery. So playing
Okay.
Misery in full.
Yeah.
I think we play one song off our album, The Decaying Light, and then two songs off the EP.
Awesome.
Finishing with Nothing Above, I think the title track from the EP.
Yeah, sick man. And well, of course, you recently released a new single, "No God Unconquered," featuring Johnny Davey from Job for a Cowboy. How did that come about? Getting him on board.
Well, it was actually after we released the album Misery back in, yeah, 10 years ago. I found out that Johnny Davey was a fan of that album, which was sort of blew my mind at the time because we've all been fans of Job for a Cowboy since we were kids, like
Yeah.
since we were like 15. They were the first death metal band I ever saw. So when I found that, I kind of reached out to him and said, "Oh man, I'd love to get you on a track one time." And this is like 8 years ago now, like yeah, 2016. Because he came out to one of our shows in the US, and um, yeah, like we'd always talked about it and been a bit back and forth, and finally got a chance to hit him up on some new stuff that I thought he'd sound sick on, and he said yes and jumped on, and he just added his, you know, he's an amazing vocalist. He's got such crazy range and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. So for me, that was a bucket list to get one of my favorite vocalists from, he's still currently one of my favorite vocalists, but even from when I was a teenager. So yeah, that was a real special thing for me.
Good to see him back in action too, hey?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Job for a Cowboy, like that's the thing. They disappeared and they come back and kill it. So I'd love for them to tour Australia again sometime.
Oh, imagine you guys together.
I mean, I would be pushing for the support for sure.
You'd be get the
Yeah,
fuck out of the way. Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
oh man, that'd be so sick. Is there anyone else on your bucket list that you'd love to, collaborate with like that?
Um, we've talked about a few different vocalists that we'd love to get, and we were throwing around literally. In last week, we were talking about the idea of having, some guitarists that we really admire in the death metal scene that we'd love to do, like, a guest riff or something like that. Like, um, for me, vocalists like John Gallagher from Dying Fetus.
Mm.
I just think that would be super sick. Whether or not it'd be possible, but like Corpse Grinder, obviously from Cannibal Corpse, so that to me would be kind of mind blowing. Um, there's another vocalist. Her name's Bridget. She's from a brutal death metal band called Stabbing. I've been wanting to get her on a
Mm.
track for a long, long while. She's got some of the sickest vocals out of any band that's getting around today. So there's definitely a lot of people that have been in my periphery that, you know, that I've been meaning to get on a track at some point. So it's just a matter of making sure it lines up at whenever that happens.
I've heard good things about Stabbing. I might have to after, on the drive home, I might have to check that out.
Honestly, like they've got sick
Mm.
riffs, sick drumming. It's one of those, there's a lot of brutal death metal that comes out, but in terms of brutal death metal that has riffs that stick in your mind and sickening vocals and yeah, just really good songwriting. They're definitely the top tier of it. So I couldn't recommend them enough.
As for Corpse Grinder, all you
Mm,
need to do is have a claw machine somewhere,
yeah,
and
that,
because he's obsessed, man. Like
that's a
his
good way to
claw,
lure them in.
yeah, that's all you got to do, and then put a vocal booth in the claw machine. So when he gets all frustrated, you just
Yeah,
record the yeah. See, might
yeah,
work.
no, that's a perfect plan. I love it.
Man, and man, you've had a pretty good year so far. Like you played Summer Breeze that looked insane and
Yeah,
toured over there with Stillbirth and as well as a run here with I can never say their name properly and Jackson's gonna laugh at me. Sanguisugabog.
Sanguisugabog.
Sugaba?
I'm pretty sure it's Sanguisugabog, but I was exactly in the same boat until I heard it a few times, and we eventually toured with them. It's been a crazy year in
Yeah,
terms
man.
of, we're not trying to tour full time like we used to, um, just due to juggling different commitments in our lives. But for us to be able to go over to Europe and do a 2.5 week stint playing a whole bunch of European festivals, um, and then we've just been hitting Australia pretty hard. So that Sanguisugabog tour was insane. The crowds were huge. Sanguisugabog, you can see why they're at the top of their game or top of the death metal game. It's because their live shows are insane. They're tight. They're fun. They're so sick. And then played a few different festivals around the country. So we're stoked with how it's been going this year. Like, yeah, for us to be able to juggle, our jobs, our families, and then sort of go out and hang out with your best mates playing death metal, I feel like we've got a good balance going at the moment.
Do you find it hard to get back to reality after doing that? I know I do. If I even do a little weekender, it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, back to normal. I'm a
I get
normal
pretty
me again.
homesick these days. Like before COVID, before I had children, I constantly want to be on the road, but being away from my wife and kids for 2.5 weeks, I'm pretty happy to get back into that homebody, routine, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, so doesn't sound exactly rock star or brutal or anything, but I love, you know, putting my kids to bed and having a quiet night. So as long as I have that catharsis of going out on tour, you know, I remain sane.
It's that balance, man. I'm the same. I'm
Exactly.
the same.
Yin yang.
Like, that's right. You go and you scream some shit, and you come home, and
Yep.
your kids are there, like, you go
Yeah, and they
straight
don't give
into
a shit.
dad mode.
But oh, my son's pretty keen because I sound like a dinosaur. So he's 2.5,
Ah,
Benji. So
nice.
yeah. So I'm in
Nice.
his good books a lot of the time.
See, my son, he's 8,
Mm.
and he's not real big on loud noises. I'm trying with him, but he loves
Yeah.
Metallica and stuff because I guess
Oh, nice.
Fortnite and all that kind of thing he's getting
Yep.
into, and they sort of come in and he wants to start a band with me.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
that's his
Yeah, yeah.
thing at the moment, and we're gonna record some tracks soon, just some silly shit, some
Yeah, that's
some
sick.
silly death metal thrash shit. So we'll see how
Hell
we
yeah.
go. But
Awesome.
man, I guess was there one of your favorite moments on that tour overseas or here this year that comes
Yeah,
to
I
mind?
think the first show that we played on that Euro run in August, we played Party San. Um and we were playing at about 6 p.m. and we hadn't been to Europe since 2018. So like, surprising, like we didn't feel like it, but half a decade had passed since we'd been in Europe. So for us to take to the stage and see an enormous tent of, several thousand people and to see so many of our shirts and stuff in the crowd, that was, just playing in front of that many people and seeing the crowds really into it, like these massive crowds. That was there was a few times where, Jake the guitarist and I would look at each other just being like, this is killer, for the both of us to have been friends since we were 7 years old and um, coming from a really small country town, you know, we're now playing to crowds bigger than the town we lived and grew up in. So
Yeah.
it was kind of yeah, there were just a few moments like that at different festivals. We finished the tour at Death Feast. Actually, we were headlining that festival. So it's like a brutal death metal festival, strictly like just brutality. And we headlined that on the Thursday night, and that was probably one of my favorite shows I've ever played. Just everything just felt sick. The crowd was insane, and again, Jake and I had this moment looking at each other, being like, "Whoa, this is, it's crazy." So yeah, overall, that tour for us was just so killer.
Which show had the most violent pit? Which was the one where you're like, "Ooh, it's getting a little."
There was a there was a show in, I forget which German city, but the pit was just going off for, we played for 55 minutes or something like that, and the pit was just going, and it was a school night, it was a weeknight, and the crowd was just going insane. It wasn't like a festival; it was just like a club show, but um, people were just going crazy for the full hour, and these crazy Germans just going off. I forget which city it was. It was at a venue called Helvet, I remember, but yeah, that was probably the one that I remember being like, geez, these guys just keep moving around and way more than what I would be because I feel like I'm getting old.
Man, how old are you now, man? Like
I'm 34.
34.
Yeah.
That's not even old, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
feel it.
Feel
You're
like
over
it
that
sometimes.
30. You do start feeling it about that
Oh,
age.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Especially
Definitely.
when you do up there doing that big stomp you do. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That
yeah.
keeps me young.
Yeah, it
That keeps me
does.
young, the
Yeah, yeah.
stomping and the moving around.
Yeah. But has there been a show where you guys have gone, shit, things are starting to get out of hand? We gonna die or something like that, Like has it
I
been
remember
mental?
there was, there's been a few shows like that, not in like the Euro tour, but there's been shows over the years where, I've asked the crowd to sort of rip each other apart, and then you kind of looking in the crowd and you're like, oh, might just sort of, I don't really want to incite actual violence.
Yeah.
You look in the crowd and people like, we played this show in LA in 2015, and I remember seeing a guy get thrown like through a table. And again, it was like a moment where Jake and I looked at each other like, whoa, what the fuck was that? Um, yeah, just like people. I remember someone broke their arm or something in that show, so it was and that was our first time playing LA, so we're like, this is pretty nuts. So yeah, I'll try and incite less violence these days because I'm like, yeah, I don't want people to have fun. Don't want them to actually throw people through furniture,
Yeah,
ideally.
that's it. Like it's like those Western, the bar fights in the Westerns,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
That's
like
yeah, that's
sliding down
honestly
the
like that's kind of like when I think about it, that's kind of what it was like.
man. That's shit money can't buy. That's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. There's not many people can say they've incited that sort of behavior.
Well, man, do you find that like each time you go to like Europe or the States, you're
Mm.
taking notice of the scene, what's happening there, maybe which bands are changing the game and things like that? Is there anyone that you're keeping an eye on at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Europe, obviously we were t doing that European tour
Mhm.
with Stillbirth, and those guys killed it every night. Um, we played with them in Asia last year, but just seeing their stage show, how tight they are, just absolute professionals, the way they do it. So you can see why a band like Stillbirth is getting a lot bigger in the scene because they're just touring hard. They're they're just smashing it. Um, and obviously mentioning Sanguisugabogg before, bands that are like changing the scene, those guys are like they are at the top of the death metal game because they're just they're doing a tour with what is it, Whitechapel and
Mm,
Lorna Shore or something at the moment. So, for a band that is essentially a brutal death metal band, ping snare, pretty abrasive, for them to be touring arenas with Lorna Shore is, I would say that's some of the most impressive things to come out of Brutal Death is to play shows that big and to hold their own as well. Like I've watched videos of them playing and
mm.
they're definitely holding their own.
It seems like the whole death metal scene's changing at the moment, or the perception of it
Mm,
at least. Like it's it's growing, man. I don't know. Like I've
mm,
been around for a long time, and I remember it was always been a bit of an underground thing, but now it seems like, as you said, like you've got the bands like that, and the deathcore bands are huge now.
yeah, I think yeah, especially with the deathcore bands, like Lorna Shore and Slaughter to Prevail, those bands that are just sort of blowing up to, levels where they're just playing massive arenas or
Mm,
you know, that sort of those sort of size venues. I think it definitely bleeds through into the more underground styles. So whether it's brutal death metal or just straight death metal, naturally, if you've got millions of people being into these sort of deathcore bands that are popping off, there is going to be some sort of residual interest in some of the more underground stuff. So that's where, a lot of people don't like those styles or have a lot of shit to talk on those bands. But I think overall, like for someone to be, you know, I remember being into way less heavy bands when I was a teenager.
mm.
Started out with Slipknot and Korn, and then eventually started listening to the death metal bands that inspire me today, like Disgorge and Brodequin. So I always see it as a really positive thing when if you've got the more heavier stuff popping off, it means there's going to be a next crop of generation that will discover and take a real interest in the underground stuff too.
That's right, 100%, man, and it's starting to happen. I'm seeing, these kids that are like 17, 16, that
Mm,
are starting to. Who was I talking to? I was talking to someone else in a band, and I was driving to work one morning, and there were two young girls walking down the street, probably would have been about 15 or 16, and
mm.
one of them was wearing an obituary shirt,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was like, man, that's sometimes you can't tell if it's they just think the shirt's cool or
yeah,
not,
yeah,
but. You're not going to pull over and be like, no, through songs. You're not going to do
yeah,
that. Don't
yeah.
do that to people, kids.
No,
But I think there was something really fucking cool about that moment, man. I was like, oh, I'm getting old, manny. But
yeah,
it shows that there's something happening, especially with that younger generation. Because if
yeah,
it doesn't, it's all going to die out in a couple of
yeah.
years.
I
We
had
need.
I had that exact same moment probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was with my wife going downtown in Toowoomba, getting a coffee, and saw a kid. He would have been about 16, working at a Thai restaurant. He's wearing a mortician hoodie, And oh, I said to my wife, I'm like, that's so fucking sick. I remember having a Mortician shirt when I was like 17, and I didn't think younger kids would be listening to it, but and it wouldn't be easy to get a Mortician hoodie. It's not like you just get them from anywhere. So, yeah, I had that exact moment where I was like, yeah, that's fucking sick. It's cool to see that there is younger kids still getting into not only death metal, but some of the stuff that I thought was sick
Yeah.
at that age too.
Did you ask him about it?
No, I didn't go up to him. I was I was dressed like a complete normie too, like in a bright blue shirt and some short shorts. So I would have just came across like a bit of a weirdo, I reckon, if I said, "Hey man, sick shirts."
I
I
don't
just
know,
left them
man.
alone.
I get super excited. My wife's like, "Oh, don't do it," and I'll be walking past, "Oh, sick shirt, man!" I just get super
Yeah,
excited when I see it's like, "My
that's
people,"
cool too, though. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
No, I like it when someone compliments my shirt in public, especially if I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And not the ones that you give them the nod and they don't nod back. Don't do that either. That's not
Yeah,
cool.
always do the nod back.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Mutual
yeah.
respect. Anyway, but
Mutual nodding.
yeah, that's for mutual nodding. Well, of course, what's after the tour? The EP's on the way. What's coming up for next year? It's going to be a big year ahead.
Yeah, I think we're lining up some plans to go to Asia again. We really want to tour China and just sort of experience that. And like I was saying before, we're at this stage in our lives where we're keen to tour, but sort of do it on our own terms.
Mm,
So, if we can play 6 shows, play in front of you know, people, but also use it as an opportunity to hang out as mates, but do it in cool places. That's kind of what we're keen to do. So we've got Asia sort of, we're in talks with that. And we're definitely looking at going back to the US again. We haven't been there since 2018 or 2019, sorry. And that is definitely the number one place for us is the US. The shows are always insane. There's always so much interest. So that's the goal, is just to find a tour for us to jump on. Like, we get a lot of tour offers, but it just never lines up due to family or work or whatever it is between the four of us. So it's definitely on the cards to try and make that work and try and jump on something real sick over in the US. And we've already started writing a new album. We've got one song finished. We're really keen just to get another album. So there's a lot of discussion happening daily between the four of us on what it's sound like, just throwing around ideas. We've got song titles all done for it now, so it's just a matter of getting the songs written to each song title and getting the artwork commissioned at the moment. So yeah, we're super keen. Like, I feel like in terms of our enthusiasm for writing has never been this high. So we've just
awesome.
got so many ideas that we want to go with.
Is that how it starts? Is song titles for you guys? You come up with sick
Yeah,
title and then you work from there?
yeah. I never write lyrics first. I always write song titles, because the way I see it is, for me, anyways,
Yeah.
you can have sick lyrics, but if you don't have like a cool song title that represents that. And I just feel like, for example, Jake wrote this new song, and I've got the song title that I've had in mind, Enmity Within the Seraphic Flock. And I was like, man, that sounds exactly like how I think that should sound. So now I've got a song title locked into a song that he's written.
Mm.
I can start writing the lyrics and start working on the vocal patterns. And we're just keen to try and get an album done by next year as well. Just sort of, we've just got so much enthusiasm and so many ideas that we're just keen to run with. So definitely not slowing down, that's for sure.
Yeah, cool, man. Hey, man, it's exciting. And we're going to have all the links down here and on the website. Brother, thanks for hanging out. It's been really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Good questions, good chat. Love it. Can't wait to hear you and your son's death metal thrash band.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's called War Fart. He came up with that.
Sick. Yeah, yeah.
So
Get
there
me a
we
shirt,
go.
I'll wear
Yeah, yeah. And I want it to be unreadable. So
it. Yeah, of
there we
course.
go. Yeah.